is that you need to write in order to remember. I heard somebody say, and I agree with them, the faintest pencil has a better memory than the best brain. May I repeat? The faintest pencil has a better memory than the best brain. You know, if I tell you something and you write even with a pencil that is not writing well, 20 years from now, you just look for that paper and you can remember what I said. But even if you are the cleverest person in this university, we meet 20 years later and you can't remember what I told you. So the faintest pencil has a better memory than the best brain. And so it means that writing becomes very critical. Not writing for other people to read, even yourself. Keeping a journal, keeping a book, taking notes, even if you might not read those notes. When you write, something sticks better in the brain. Am I right? So you can see that when you're discussing about writing, do not just think about writing to become, to publish. Even writing for yourself. Second point we have been told is to understand that God himself values writing. Otherwise, how come that the Old Testament, a big proportion of it, is written by somebody who was schooled? What is his name? Who has the biggest, don't count the number of books, but the number of pages. Nobody has as many pages as a guy called Moses. And he went to school, trained in Pharaoh's house, and because of that education, God used it to write a big proportion of the Old Testament. In the New Testament, a guy called Paul went to school. Remember, he went to a university. He talked about it and studied. Then he gets saved, and maybe a third of the New Testament is written by Paul. Am I right? Tells you something about the importance of schooling and the importance of writing. Because without schooling, writing will be difficult. But many people are educated but don't write. Am I right? And you have come here because you don't want to be named among them. You want to write. And I thought that's something important for us to mention. So, we need to write in order to remember. God values writing, and that's why he uses educated people like Moses and Paul to actually record down. And I think that will be important for you to get. Still talking about writing at this introduction level, it will be very, very important to understand that where there is no written record, people never progress. Because if you don't know history, if you ignore history, you condemn yourself to repeat their mistakes. Have you ever heard of that saying? But how will you know their mistakes if they never wrote down? I'm currently reading a biography by Pastor Gishinga, and I can see his arguments about the things they did, what they did not go up to his church, whatever. And I'm so happy he has put it down, because the future pastors can read and see what went well, what did not go well. By writing down what you are doing, you help the next generation not to repeat your mistakes, but to improve. Are we together? So if you don't write down, you are condemning everybody to keep repeating. Ever been in the kind of school where they tell people to repeat? You are already 3, year 1, already 3, year 2, then you go to already 4, year 1. By the time you finish primary, you are a mzee with beards. Now, it's important to understand that you need to find a way of progressing. And knowledge increases when you base it on what other. And that's why it's a very interesting. I remember talking about Ethiopia, where more than 1,000 years ago, they could have a city underneath. They would dig down into the stone and build houses. I ask, how come 1,000 years later, they are learning how to read and write. They do not have information. Somewhere along the way, they lost the progression. And the biggest mistake is not to write. If you don't write, I repeat, you condemn yourself to repeat your predecessors. Rather, if they don't write. If they don't write, you are condemned to repeat their mistakes instead of actually improving. So, without going too long in that introduction, I think it will be important for us to ask ourselves. Let me give you an example of a story which was written and I thought it was very useful. The message of the story is, it doesn't matter how you have started in the Christian faith. It really doesn't matter how are you doing. It doesn't matter that you are this or the other. In fact, last Sunday, part 1, I was speaking in the main campus, University of Nairobi, and I was able to tell them that in 1974, I was a Bible study coordinator. How many years ago is that? How many years? 74 to 24 is how many? 50. And I really was grateful to God to sit in Taiba Hall again, where I was that time in 1974 as a coordinator. But that's then, 50 years ago. It tells you nothing about now. You can actually, according to this story, you can very easily go different routes. Let me just read. In 1946, the National Association of Evangelicals in America published an article on men who are best use of God in that organization's 5-year existence. At the top of the list was Chuck Templeton. One seminary president called this young evangelist the most gifted and talented young man in America today for preaching, head of quote. Many were certain he would be the heir of D.L. Moody and Billy Sunday, the next great American evangelist. Templeton started well, very well, but eventually he turned his intellectual gifts to himself rather than his father God. He lapsed into academic arrogance and agnosticism. The last book he published before his death in 2001 was titled Farewell to God. Can you imagine somebody that such a history? I continue. Years ago, when Chuck Templeton began his crusade ministry, he eventually developed a preaching partnership with another young evangelist, a man the 1946 article never even mentioned, the son of a North Carolina farmer named William Franklin Graham, known to his family and small circle of friends as Billy. It doesn't matter how you have started the Christian faith. You may have had a great beginning or a rough one. You may have fallen on your face again and again. What matters is, in the most important race of your life, is how you finish. Now, the writing of that story, which I've read several times, is a very worrying thing. That at that time, Billy Graham was a small preacher unknown. Templeton, around the same age, was making things move. Many years later, they are both old men. One is unheard of, unknown. The other one is known every corner of the world. You as young people, please do not just look at where you are now. You must make a commitment with God's help to move forward, because your history is not that important if you are not going to progress. Here is what Paul learned across that years of serving Jesus as the Messiah. That's Paul, Apostle Paul. He learned God has a purpose, a passion for our lives. He was to take Christ to as many Gentiles as he could. In other words, He says the reason why God created me is to take the gospel among the Gentiles. Question. You, if you don't want to become like Templeton, what do you think God has created you for? Number two, God will give us the preparation, number one, the people, number two, and the protection we need so long as we are faithful to his purpose. You will discover if you keep with his purpose, he will give you people to help you along the way. He will protect you, and you become what you want. Number three, that we learn through Paul, we can expect persecution and opposition. In the journey to become something, you should expect it. But our God is greater, and our death is departure to eternal reward. So don't live afraid of death. Whether you die at 30 or 40 or 90 is irrelevant. Have you been within your calling? Are we together? Are you living in God's purpose today? Are you fighting your good fight, finishing your race, to finish your race? Are you going to keep your faith to the end? If so, your legacy will last forever. And I think that will be something very, very important. You know, what lies behind you and what lies in front of you pales in comparison to what is inside you. Let me repeat. What lies behind you, the things you have accomplished that far, what lies in front of you, the thing you might accomplish into the future, pales in comparison to what is inside you. That you need to understand that God is not in the business of making trash. Each one of us is important. There is something inside you that is supposed to benefit everyone. Can we be clear? God does not create you to benefit yourself. He creates you to benefit others. If you have, I don't know which is the fruit tree common in your home area. Guava. It's common. Have you ever seen a guava tree eat its own fruit? In my place, plum trees are very, very, very many, especially around November, December. But I have never seen a fruit tree eat its own fruit. In fact, what happens is it grows, the fruits come. If you don't eat the fruit, they just drop and rot. Am I right? Because if the fruits were not meant for the trees, they were meant for the neighbors. Your life is not about yourself. Your life is about others. People are writing purpose statements. They say, I want to be the greatest man. That's about you. Christians know your life is, how will my life impact others? When you talk about God calling you, he does not call you to serve yourselves. He calls you to serve. By the way, do you know it's not to serve God? God has no need. You cannot serve him in any way. Has absolutely no need you can serve. So when you talk about being God's servants, we are God's servant for him to use us to benefit others. I'm still coming to writing. But the reason we write is because there are things God has put in us, and we want others to hear, to benefit. You write for their benefit, and I think that will be something very important. That's something from Ralph Waldo Emerson. The wise man must remember that while he is descendant of the past, he is a parent of the future. This Herbert Spencer. In other words, you are descendant of your parents, which is important to note, but you are the parent of the future. So you ask yourself, how can I make the future better than the past? And how will God use me for that to happen? The only two lasting bequests we can hope for to give our children or the future. One is roots, the other is wings. I'm quoting Hardin Carter. In other words, please, as you develop yourself, aim at giving your children roots. You can tell them about their grandfather. But more important, give them wings. What are wings? Ability to fly, to be better than you. We should always look for children who will be better than us. That means you have given them wings. in every deliberation, we must consider the impact of our decision to the next 7 generations. 7 generations. So, with that kind of background, what are the reasons another write? The biggest reason for writing is to spread my message about subject that I feel very passionate about because I believe they will benefit others. If you don't feel passionate about anything, please don't limit writing. Writing is such a boring exercise, such a tedious exercise. There are easier things to do. So there must be something that causes you to continue writing. For most of my books, they take me 3 years. For a whole year, it doesn't end. Another year, it doesn't end. Another year, it's still not ending. And because I've been working, I worked for Shell for around 30 years, I'll take leave. When others go to do their hustles, me, I'm writing. I sit there, my wife is cooking, I'm eating, but there's nothing I'm doing. I'm simply writing. The 1 month the leave ends, the book is still not complete. I continue writing slowly, then I take another leave. It doesn't end. By that time, most people give up. In fact, I keep telling people, my biggest gift is not writing, it's patience. Because there are people who are better writers, but they keep along the way. Some of you may even have started, isn't it? Then somewhere along, this thing will never end. When you have passion, you'll continue with it. So there must be something in you that you believe will benefit other people, and you are passionate about it. Writing a book is an instant credibility booster from business perspective. Writing a book is the fastest way to gain credibility. Establishing yourself as an excellent expert in your field and building professional reputation. It can also be used as a promotional item and marketing tool for your business. In other words, there are other benefits. When you write a book, number 1, it makes you credible. In other words, you are saying, people, you jump 2 feet. Another one, right? No. People who are healthy jump 5 feet. Between you are talking and the one who has written, who is likely to be obeyed? Some foolish person wrote a foolish thing. You are clever, but you have not written. People will follow the one who has. Am I communicating? Yeah, that's what you need to write. Even a textbook cannot be your head. You must put it down. Then it will become a textbook that others are going to follow. So to gain credibility, you put down what you write. Of course, I have to put a comma and say, also when you write it down, people know you are thinking. So I know there are people who cannot invite me on certain topics because they don't agree with me. I have written a book called Finding a Right Partner. Ever heard of it? Is it in your library? Do you have my books in your library? Yes. Okay. Who is in charge of the library docket? They never turned up for the meeting. And they're the ones who organize it. Oh, you are there. Follow me until I donate all my books to your library. So your first exercise is to find out how many you have. I've written that less one. The 30th is with the printer. Maybe by the time I do. So find the one you have. The ones you don't have, I'll donate to the place. Are we together? Now, why am I donating? Because what I've written, I'm passionate about. So I wrote this book about finding a life partner. And in it, I say that you cannot marry, a non-Christian cannot marry a Christian, just like a donkey cannot marry a cow. They can be neighbors, but they are not of the same level. So that's why when she can be a very beautiful figure-8 girl, all you need to find out is she a cow or? The moment you realize I'm a cow, she's a donkey, do you go the same direction? No. You can eat grass nearby, but you know this one, you can't form a family. Now, somebody who thinks that kind of belief is not good, will they ever invite me to talk on that topic? No. So writing makes people know about you, so they avoid you. Because they now know where you stand. But the important thing is what you say in writing is likely to be more powerful than what people are saying under their blankets. So it's important to understand that and spend time with it. Asking yourself, a legacy is what writers actually finally have. And I think that will be important. Let me say, everything you and I possess today, whether good or bad, will pass down to those who come after us. And that's what Paul Meyer says. And what we leave to others is what we call a legacy. Legacy is something you leave to the next generation. A legacy is like a safe deposit box filled with valuables. It is only natural that the owner of the box, because he's going to die, will tell the recipient what is inside the box. You know, it's kept at a lock and key in a room, we're not allowed. But if you can see you are soon dying, please tell people about it. And the best way of doing that is to write about it. Are we together? Tell them what is in it, what is inside that box. Number two, tell them how are the things inside that box work, how do they work. And number three, why are they important? You know, if you see it one day, say this thing is too ugly, throw it to the toilet. And yet inside are very valuable things. Are we together? So it will be important for you to write. And you need to do that before you go. So what are things you know very well and they are valuable, and your children are not likely, or even people who come after you will not value them, because although they are precious, you never told them why they are precious. That's why you need to write. It will then after that be to the recipient of the box to choose what he or she will do with the key now that he understands exactly what the box is all about. All the responsibilities, however, does not rest on the shoulders of the recipient alone. The one who is the current owner must of necessity help for the next generation to enjoy their legacy. So, I think it will be important that we ask ourselves that, why then do we write? First of all, we said you must have a message. Number two, why do we write? Because we want to persuade. We want to persuade the person that what is inside that box is so critical that they should not throw it away, that they should actually study the instructions, that they should use it. So the first thing is persuasion. A book persuades you a video. So, and you know it can be dangerous when you write just for information. No, some people write for information. No, that's not the way to write. You must write as a persuasion. You must put your language such that the guy, you can do a not a call at the end of the book, because you are persuaded. And even preaching, there are people who just preach. Jesus said, there's a way of saying things that is just information. There's another way of saying the same thing that convicts the people to change. Are we together? So when you write, you must ask yourself, what transformation do I want on my readers? Which is the best way of saying it? That will, because a book is a persuasion through. And it will be important to ask yourself, is that something you are doing yourself? Number two, you also write to inform. Because before you persuade, they must know what is inside the content of the box. But thirdly, and remember they are all, I'm giving in order of importance. The most important thing for writing the book is to persuade, to get a result, to get a conversion. The next one is to inform. Let them know. Because some people refuse to be persuaded, but at least they will know the information. But the least of them is to entertain. You know, some people are so interested in entertaining that you finally lose the message in the entertainment. Are we together? And that's what's part of the problem you people are having current your generation. You write a very good song, very good words, then you start acting. The song is saying, hallelujah, he is great. But you are dancing to the left, to the right. Now, do we remember the drama contradicts the message? Am I communicating? So it will be important to understand that entertaining will not persuade. It will just make people happy. In fact, if you want to know a meeting is good, ask yourself at the meeting, what are you going to change? If nothing changes, it was just entertainment. Or it's a very much better, at least information. But I'm saying entertainment is the lowest level. You need to inform. Most important, you need to bring a change within the person who is actually reading it. Chances are, if you are passionate about a certain subject, there will be somebody else who will also be passionate. And if they are not, you can persuade them to become passionate. By writing a book about that subject which you are passionate about, it will help others in their own lives. I've talked about persuading. Don't persuade just so that you are known yourself. Persuade because when I read the book, I myself will benefit. A writer does not write for his own benefit. After all, he's already benefiting. He writes for the benefit of others. So it will be important that as you are writing, you are looking at how the reader can actually benefit. And help yourself achieve a more fulfilled life yourself. By telling others and seeing how they benefit, what happens? You know, on that day, I was speaking in an international workshop that was going on in Karen. I don't know, maybe there were 10, 15 countries represented. But there was somebody who used to be a STEM staff a long time ago. And she was the one who was asked to introduce me. And she talked about how, maybe 5, 6 years ago, 6 or 7 years ago, she was a STEM staff. And she had just finished reading my book, Finding a Right Partner. Then I was speaking in university far away, and she had to come back to Nairobi. She said, can you give me a lift? Once she was in my car, she said, you know, I'm so happy. I have questions about your book. So I said, we have more than 4 hours of driving. Ask all of them. Now, her husband came forward and said, I found him. After reading the book, finding, what do you think I felt? The book benefited somebody. Am I communicating? Even the husband thanked me for writing the book. Now, what I'm trying to tell you is that if once others benefit, there's nothing that's more exciting than to benefit others. That when you see people benefiting from your writing, from your life, it makes you live a fulfilled life. So you also actually benefit. Let me now summarize what I think you are aiming at as you write. Number one, we have said you are informing, so your book must contain facts. There must be not opinions and guesses and suspicions. There must be fact. Research well enough so that what you are saying is factual. Number two, you are writing to persuade. So talk about those, give your opinion about the facts. You are writing also for some people who will be entertained. Tell your facts in an enjoyable manner. You are also trying to convey a mood. Here the user uses imagery and descriptive details to create certain feeling. In other words, you know, have you ever seen somebody reading a book and they are smiling? The mood of the writer has gotten into the reader. Am I communicating? Yeah, so you do that in your writing. But some you are simply describing. Contains many descriptive details, adjectives, and imagery. And finally, since you are expressing an opinion, you hope using that opinion to persuade against another opinion. Because sometimes the reason you are writing the book is to get people out of the way. I can tell you, I got saved in a non-Pentecostal church. And you are told, we are not you are not people of spirits in my church. We were born again, but we live the people of the spirit. And I was in Form 2, 1969, when I saw a tract written to tell people why Pentecostalism is bad. I read it. And as I read that piece of paper, the more I read it about why you cannot be a Pentecostal, the more I realized the writer is unbiblical. That's the track that finally got me to seek the filling of the Holy Spirit. Am I communicating? So, as you write, be aware that if you don't have a good case, it could actually work against you. But that's important to get people that but sometimes you write in order to teach a lesson. There's someone who doesn't know how to ride a bicycle. You struggled and now you know how to ride a bicycle. Because you can't understand how somebody balances on two wheels. If you have learned it, instead of other people struggling, why don't you write a book on how to ride bicycle? That is a teaching lesson. How long does it take for another to write a book? I've just told you about my own experience, isn't it? I don't think there is a particular rule about how long. It can take a long time to write a novel. Well, it can take long. Or write a book. Why? I've just told you if there are going to be facts in the book, you must do some research. So sometimes you are not actually researching. You are not writing. You are looking for information. But sometimes that's not the problem. You are writing and you get what they call the writer's bug. You just lose interest in writing. And that's a killer of most writers. They are writing, getting excited, then they lose interest. They have interest in a girl somewhere, so they forget about what they were writing. Whatever the issue is, you lose that one, and for a long time you even forget where you stopped. That's one of the things I think God has given me on. When I choose to do something, I do it as a discipline. What's a discipline? A discipline means something you do, not because you enjoy doing it, but because it's good to do. And it's important to have a disciplined life. A disciplined life is where you do things, not because you enjoy them, but because they are important to do. But that can take you time. If you just write when you feel like writing, you might never finish your book. But sometimes the reason the book takes time is because you are fine-tuning sentences. Every book I have written is in many drafts. Maybe at this point I can tell you the stages. The first stage is I form in my mind a need, like now that one, finding a life partner, is many non-Christians are interfering with the Christians, and there are a lot of attraction. In fact, people say the crossover from being single to being married is a graveyard of many youths. Would you agree with me? Somehow, I don't know, people have been wonderful in the CU, then you hear he ended up with the wrong girl. Or he took a right girl but impregnated her. All those things happen, isn't it? Now, so I thought, since the Lord helped me through it, why can't I write down in order to help others? So you need to form a problem in society, a need in society that requires help. That's what will create a passion in you. So you can't write until that is done. Conceive in your mind, that is a problem. Step number 2, ask yourself, that's the problem. Do I really have the answer? If you have no answer, that's the end of writing. Because you can't write nothing. You can't write about the problem. A concept of the problem, that's not enough. You are writing in order to give an answer. Are we together? So you ask yourself a question. Do I really have an answer in that area? If the answer is yes, you can go to the third step. What's the third step? Looking at that problem and looking at that kind of answer that's forming in your mind and asking yourself, what are the sub-problems and the sub-answers? Which if you dealt with all the sub-problems and sub-answers, the big problem would have been sorted out. Once you read it, so the first one we call a theme. Second one we call topics. So the topics are various things. If I deal with all these issues, I would have dealt with the other one. When you write that down, it's an outline. Your book is forming. You have not written anything, there are no details, but you now have an idea. That is the theme. These are the issues I have to tackle. If I finish it, that's a book. Once your outline is out, you can talk about writing the book. You can't write without the outline, because basically you keep repeating yourself. But the outline helps you to know, have finished chapter 1, I'm now going to chapter 2, chapter 3 is coming, so I don't say in chapter 2 what I should say in chapter 3. Am I communicating? Once I have that outline, and I'm giving my personal, that's why you invited me. So you wanted me to tell you my personal way of writing. Others may write very differently. So I now, with the outline, I start doing what I normally do for the data books that I have written so far. I actually go back to my notes and discover I have really been invited in Kapete campus, Upper Kapete campus, to talk about girl boyfriend. I was in Maseno, I was asked about girlfriend. All those are notes in my file somewhere. So I just start going through my notes, and I realize this note fits in chapter 1, this one in chapter 2, this one in chapter 8, this one chapter 2. No. It just means chapter 3, chapter 6, chapter 8 have nothing. But these other ones, I just need to improve them. The ones where I have nothing, I start researching because I don't have anything on it. In the process, as I research those other chapters, I have draft number 1. All the chapters have been, all topics have been covered, the theme. Now I have draft number 1. Draft number 1, I would not want anybody to come across it. Why? Remember, I did it from different angles. It doesn't flow. So I now sit back and start going page by page. So here I said, this story, I read it in chapter 2, now it's chapter 3. I'm repeating the same story in the same book. So I now delete it in 1. Or this story, it does not illustrate here. It's better here rather than here. So I am cleaning up. Some things I read, some things I add, it's flowing. Now, after doing it, now the book flows. Because I have kind of tried to align it. I have draft number 2. I'm ready to go to draft number 3. In draft number 3, I'm now worried about language and whether with the way I'm speaking it, other people can understand me. So I read it, to produce the third draft, I read draft number 2, and now it flows. Now I'm ready to give somebody, not an editor, but a friend of yours who knows something about that subject. When he reads, he'll tell you, how come you left out this topic? You write it down. How come you are saying this? This is nonsense. He must be a friend enough to tell you off, and the friendship still remains. So you, with all that, you now are ready. With his comments, you produce draft number. Hey, are you with me? Draft number 4. I just wanted to check whether you are there. He has helped to produce draft number 4. Once you have draft number 4, you now are ready to go to an editor. Now that's a manuscript which you can actually give a professional to look at. And the professional will tell you, no, do this, do the other, and draft number 5 comes out. And from then onwards, maybe a publisher is willing to publish it. If they are willing, they actually now accept it's good enough for the market. A publisher is a businessman. A publisher's work is not to help the writer, it's to enrich himself. So he only accepts a manuscript which the market can buy. Are we together? So he assesses how much can they buy, at what price. There's no longer none of the writer's business. The writer was writing, but it's not the writer who is going to make money. It is the businessman called publisher who will make money. He's the one who sets the price, he sets everything. So the first thing is, he pays the editor. The publisher pays the editor to do another job. Number 2, once the editor has done his job, he now pays another guy called proofreader. The editor is looking at communication. Is a book communicating? Is it understandable? The proofreader is interested in, is it good English? Is the grammar right? Is the spelling right? That's the work of the proofreader. Once the book has been properly proofread. Now it's a book that cannot embarrass you in the market, but it's just a collection of papers. You now give it to a designer. The designer is the one who designs the cover and decides how they will look like. What typeface, would it be bold or light, what will happen? Are there going to be pictures and designs? That's the work of the designer. Once the designer has finished his book, he can hand it back to a printer. And the printer prints the book. The book is now out of the print. The journey is not over. You see, the publisher is the one who pays the editor, then pays the designer, the proofreader, then pays the designer, then pays the printer. He has one more job to do, to look for a distributor, somebody with outlets where the market is. And they agree together that if you distribute this book, I'll give you this percentage of the cover price. And distributor goes with a lot of the money for the cover price, so the book can go. Of course, you can become a hawker, where you are running, buy my book, buy my book. Then you have to remember the Swahili. Kizuri, Kibaya. So when you see somebody hawking, there are chances that it's not a good product. Otherwise, a good book, you see it in a bookshop, you also want to read it, isn't it? This one was saying, please, just build me. You are a beggar. Don't give me the book. Just say you have nothing to eat. I'll give you the money. You should never persuade people to buy your books. Just tell them what the book is about. Let them choose. After all, they might buy and not read it. A writer's interest is not the money. It's transformation of people, isn't it? So you don't want people to buy unless they intend to read. Are we together? So that's why you give a distributor in order for the book to be available where people that are interested could be there. Once the distributor has sold the cover price, he returns maybe 60% or 70% to the publisher. The publisher is likely to give you only 10%, and you are the writer. Isn't that disappointing? That's why it needs to be understood. If you intend to make money through writing, please go and live in America, where the population is big and people are readers. In Kenya, people only read textbooks. So unless your book is chosen by KIE or whatever they are called, ICD. I think what they call ICD now. Yeah. And when it is picked, there are about 1.2 million third ones. Can you imagine if your book is picked by them, even if you only earn 100 shillings out of the cover price, that will be 1.2 million. Am I right? I'm getting my point. But if you write a book that's not going to be recommended by the syllabus makers, in Kenya you can hardly make money. So the excitement is not about the money. It's about, even if only 1,000 books are bought or 2,000, there are 2,000 people who are having to deal with your material. And that's what you are after. Are we together? So that is something that will help you. So what have we said so far? There must be a passion. Good writing is always about something. Write the argument of your book in one sentence before, and I've already said that at the beginning, develop a theme, a clear theme of what you want to do. So try to see, can I summarize what I want to write about in one sentence? Once that is done, can you stretch it to a paragraph, what you call a concept paper? Once you have done that, can you write a whole page of everything you want to write about? After that, please write an outline, a table of content, so for breaking the chapters. Then good. And I think I've already talked about that one. So you are aiming at helping young people cultivate strong reading and writing culture. So you are giving them something to read. I realize if I don't finish, we will not have time for questions. And I thought it was a 2-hour meeting. We'll finish at 5. So I wanted to deal also with the issue of reading. But since the notes are available, you will make them available to everybody? Is that okay? Now, you read, because I've run out of, we only got half an hour, and I want us to be able to discuss before 5 o'clock. You read the material, both what I've talked about, and also what is in the, on the section about why read, what the importance of reading, how to read. And then if you have a question, you can write it directly to me. Is that acceptable? The discussion can go on after the meeting. Is that acceptable? Okay, let me give you my telephone number so you can contact me directly and we continue this discussion. 0743 034 157. Let me repeat. 0743 034 157. So we can discuss. I summarize by saying 4 things. Number 1, without writing, we condemn ourselves to repeat yesterday's mistakes. So there must be writing. Number 2, that writing is not just for the experts. Everybody can write. Everybody can write. And even if you write and you don't have good English, I've just told you there is an editor and a friend who can improve it, isn't it? Yeah, so the important thing is, do you have an idea? Is that idea going to help other people? Even if you don't know how to write, just write the way you write. Somebody is going to work on it and improve on it. Number 3, please don't write for money, because basically after you write the first one, you might never write another one. Because writing is hard work. It can take you a long time. And when you look at what you are getting back, it may not be worth the money. That's not for everybody. It's for those whose books don't go to be recommended list. Are we together? Yeah, so the thing. And then final thing is, write, because God has called you to pass on the gift He has given you for the benefit of others. Thank you. Question time.